find out what happens, and hey, we are in fact live, and that's
Yay.
the situation. So all of you cats and kittens out there in the world, thanks for tuning in, or catch us on replay because StreamYard says no one's here yet. So I'm actually going to go ahead and hide this for just a second, and we're going to go with just this screen. There we go. Look at that. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for. I'm sorry, I'm a little spaced off. We had this weird technical difficulty thing out there, and it threw me. Tonight on the Mattriarchy, I am joined by Matt Krotz and
Yo.
What's up?
Who apparently have never spoken before. So that I don't know. I guess since I knew both of them, that's my fault. But
yeah, it's fun. I mean, I've heard like maybe 40 hours of Twitless talking.
Are you serious?
across like 3 streams.
I commented on a Twitter post of yours once. I think I did that.
Yeah. But just like if I catch like 3 Oz streams, I've heard endless hours. So that's all.
I have to be completely honest. I have never made it very far into an Oz stream.
Yeah.
Because the level of insipidness that goes on there, I just can't even stomach.
Yeah, we'll have to chat about that because I'm kind of pro Oz in that sense of just I think there's more progress has been made towards clarifying and resolving tension, even if everyone leaves with the same opinions that they had when they came in. They at least are going to be more cool with each other from here on out on Twitter, I feel like, because they've had a chance to yell at each other. And at least there's that progress. And things have been boiling for months, and now people they can freely yell at each other now. They have a place, you know.
See, my problem is that, like, that to me, just, and like I said, I can't make it very far because everybody's complaints are such like stupid surface level Nancy boy butthurt, whereas where there are deep systemic philosophical issues that are not being addressed by anyone, that are historical. And it's like, no, I've always been right. No, you were never right. And
I've tried to get to the root of some of those, and they usually get.
And I know, and then they call you a woman and high voice. I've seen that, you know. You know.
I will say one thing I enjoy about it is that it's great networking, because it's open. Which means, like, I was able to talk to industry professionals who would have their own shows, but they'd have like a wall, obviously, that, like, you know, they'd only invite the people they knew. Whereas the Oz show is literally like, when he pops the link in chat, anyone can come on. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to go from a no one that no one knew to a no one that everyone hated. And it was it's been great for my YouTube metrics.
That right there is a really weird metric to have. I'm just gonna say that is the strangest. It's like, well, at least though, you know, I'm hated. It's like, I don't have any patience.
And that's kind of, it's funnily enough, I guess. That might be the one critique about Doug, that maybe because we were talking about Doug Tenable off stream.
We were.
If he just remembered, if he went back to 2018 Doug, when he was okay with and he was actually giving people fuel to make fun of him and being comfortable with that, that's how people start to love you. You know, that's the Cecil scenario. That's anyone on the internet scenario. Is if you
that's not the Cecil scenario.
Are comfortable. Yep. You know,
that is absolutely not the Cecil scenario. Cecil is somebody who deals with being made fun of because it gives him the salacious crumb power, and he's a leech. He's an absolute manager with nothing to offer the world. So.
He can.
I have zero respect for that guy.
He knows.
I haven't listened to him in a long time.
I don't know much about him. I will say the couple things I've seen, he knows how to read a room pretty well. So it's I'm not. I mean, that's a skill.
The sycophants have to, so they know when not to get their head chopped off by the tyrant ruler that they attach themselves to.
I mean, I'm not. I'm not.
Can we at least say, like,
I'm not a Cecil.
He never gets
I'm not
defensive, I guess. Like, Well, I don't know. Maybe he even has.
That's not true.
Yeah. Yeah, we've all seen those streams.
Somebody who doesn't get defensive doesn't take the time to tell Doug Ernst to F off. So
That's true. That's true.
Honestly, I'm usually not very comfortable talking about other people when they're not here because I feel like that adds more to the fuel to the fire because it's like so-and-so said that's on this stream, so-and-so said on this stream, and then it's
yeah. But everybody knows that I have no respect for people, so I think that
that's fair.
It'll be just like, oh, that Reese, he's just an ass, and it's true.
I've never said that. I've always said that you have the second best superhero and supervillain high school gag comic on the internet.
Yeah, but you're wrong every time you say it. Because I'm at least number 3. You know.
Oh, okay. That's good.
If I had a nickel for every person that told me Reese was an ass, I'd have like 30 cents by now.
Yeah. There you go.
That's fun, man. I feel so out of the loop. Like I've never heard anyone call Reese an ass.
Me neither.
I think I've gotten annoyed with him trying to stay serious on the internet, which is always a bad idea. But I don't know.
So we have a topic tonight, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, I'm going to correct you, Matt. Because I don't try to stay serious.
Don't let that escape. Don't let that. Never let me escape.
Yeah, I don't want to stay serious on the internet. I want to stay accurate on the internet. And those aren't the same thing. Because I am not my standard. At least I try not to be my standard. I try to shoot for something that's beyond that.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, that does mean that I sometimes say serious things, but it's not because I'm clutching pearls or holding it too close to my chest. And but it also means I don't care if I get blocked by somebody who decides to take offense at my opinion on Ziploc bags.
Hey, I use Ziploc bags for Curie Book 1, and everyone loves it. So
I learned on some of those 40-hour streams that, by golly, you better bag and board your books or you're going to get stalked till the end of time.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, like, there's not, with that question, we'll move on because I know we don't want to.
I'm just being facetious.
The thing is like it doesn't have to be either or. You really can, do the best thing for your product, whatever that is. I mean, it's possible to find the best thing.
No, you have to bag and board, or you're a scam artist, and you're dead to me.
Like a really good example with Matt's book is a funny size, so like a bag won't help it like not move and protect it. It just wouldn't. So
yeah.
I mean, his system.
I can't do just a Ziploc bag.
No, you can't do just a Ziploc bag either. It's got to be the right kind of thing because it's this big, chunky, thick, beautiful presentation piece that is weird size that won't fit in other things,
including in a Gemini. Yeah.
You gotta bag and board it.
All I know is Bigfoot Bill 2 better coming up.
After talking it up, I wish I had my copy out here. Anyway, Fly Fox Pro has joined.
That's
Yo.
Yeah,
I have.
So, tonight's topic, right? And everybody forgot about it, even though I mentioned it on Twitter several times this week. Matt had a really fun hot take on the Hugo Awards, and I thought this is a really good time to talk about, be careful what you wish for.
What the hell's a Hugo?
And so, Matt, why don't you go ahead and see if you can rehearse it again, pull it out of your memory, and go from there.
Yeah, well, a Hugo Award is the sci-fi and fantasy literature award, and it's suffered some controversy in the recent past. I think people have voted in what was it, like the gay dinosaur who dated me and left me. That won like a few years ago.
I don't remember any of the particular projects, but the thing I specifically remember from what was this 2015, 2014?
Yep, around there.
Was that there was a cadre of conservative creators, and we can discuss my air quotes later if we really want to. But
well, I can speak to that because I was involved in that to a minor degree.
Okay,
but.
that's cool. But
so when the time
first,
comes.
let's move on. But who decided they were going to play the system because they felt they were being played, and that was a big controversy. And
because there was something of a literature gate, I guess, fantasy gate.
Yeah.
In a way going on, and so I guess it's a fairly woke demographic that's being appealed to in these award ceremonies, and I think it seems like things are escalating each year.
And doesn't that seem like all awards ceremonies are, they pander to that sort of environment, right?
Yeah. And I think it's kind of interesting. So part of this may be just me coming from a formerly progressive kind of perspective. So I can understand the language. I can understand kind of the processes that people are going through to form these sort of arguments. And I can empathize, and I can sort of see that I think people are having a bit of a crisis where they're realizing that the fruits of these sort of, demanding that people treat you according to your immutable qualities are actually limiting them in the very ways that they thought that they were fighting against. And now they're calling those things racists. They're calling progressivism racist without realizing it, because they're realizing that it's boxing them into these sort of cookie cutter molds of like what their sort of racial experience is, rather than the sort of stories that they want to tell.
So are you saying that just maybe progressivism is actually racist?
Yeah, and I think more and more people on the left are trying to negotiate that to some extent. Some of them are more conscious of it than others. I don't know how much this lady was aware of it, but she seems like half red-pilled, if you want to use that sort of term. She's half kind of woken up to the consequences of these sort of things. I mean, she's still just blaming white people for it, which I think is half-hearted.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically that was the thing that triggered it, and I just said she's right. She's absolutely right. and no one else has said she's right.
So we've kind of gone a little bit talking on the edges of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and pull back a little bit.
Sure.
Because you're talking about sad puppies and rabid puppies, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is the thing. Fly Fox, you said you were involved in an ancillary fashion back in the day. Let's hear your story, man. I didn't even know that. I'm just like,
interesting.
I just brought you on.
I just happened to wander in. Yeah.
I invited you on because you, Matt, were having such a fun back and forth, and I'm just like, man, I love these guys. They have something good to say. You're among the small group of people that I don't just dislike. Now I got a very small circle, and I have to say, for all of you out there in the world, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I just am one.
You don't have to try; it comes naturally.
It is 100%. I believe in that. In my fallen state, I am just an awful person, and I try to mitigate that, but I also have to be true to myself, and that means I'm going to say the worst thing at least once a week. So that's just the way it is. But I like you guys are thoughtful. You have an idea, and I thought you're back and forth, and I said this is really cool. I want it on. And then the same day, Twitless, you were not talking about this explicitly. You were talking about San Diego and talking about the fruits of kind of the ideology that causes a mental cancer. That was sort of the tack that the chat was going in on Tuesday. And I said, you know what? This sounds like something that I really want to get these three minds together to talk about the Hugos and this whole thing. Awesome. So, also, I did not say earlier, hello to Flying Saucer, hello to Pope Fire. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, hey guys.
If you guys have questions, feel free to shoot them out at us, and I'll try to spot them. So, but Fly Fox, talk to us about your experience. Ooh, hey.
Right. So I'm preface this with I'm no longer in the well, at least for the time being, in the bustling metropolis that I live in the middle of. I'm actually out in the country right now, so if I start to robo or something like that, that's why. So I've been a long-time science fiction and fantasy reader, and I also studied writing in college. And around that time, I found an author named Larry Correia. He writes a series called Monster Hunter International, Grim Noir Chronicles, a bunch of other stuff. He's a very he puts out a lot of books. He writes a fun book and
I actually,
treats. Mhm.
I was gonna say, I actually have a bit of an online history with Larry as well, not like closely or anything, but I have been an orbiter of the Dixonverse community online for a number of years. My former editor at Fanzing, who I've had on the show a couple times, Mike Hutchison, was a regular poster over the Dixonverse forums way back in 20 years ago. And through that association, I've made casual acquaintances with a few of the guys in that community. So I've chatted very briefly with Larry online through the years. So I'm aware of his stuff. Yeah.
So for anyone that doesn't know about Larry, he actually got his publishing start with a book he was posting in gun forums, like gun nut forums, as he calls himself, a gun nut. And that was Monster Hunter International. And then he published that book, and he actually published the beginning of really online self-publishing. And Bang Books saw that, and they signed him to contract for more books, and they republished it and stuff. And he's very successful. Well, he's a libertarian minded person, and so he attracts people who are conservative as fans. Now, something that happened was basically this conservative group of fans, mostly centered around people like Larry and others. Brad Torgensen was another one. Conservative-minded people. They saw that basically the Hugo Awards were being influenced by a small block of voters to vote for basically, if you want to put it in these terms, a woke books, SJW quote unquote type books, basically agenda first, identity politics first, and then
this was like what this was like 2014, 2015.
Quality second.
Yeah, it was like a few years behind.
Yeah, probably right around that time.
So it was in the middle of the.
Yeah. So what Larry proposed to do was to organize these people who are recognizing this together and form a voting block of their own, and they would nominate based on who they thought deserved the work on merit. Now, this is the part that gets misconstrued. This next part is the part that gets misconstrued, lied about, including or like news organizations like NPR have lied about this next part on radio, on articles.
No, NPR
just putting out a narrative that's false. Yeah, surprise, right? surprise. But basically, the idea was to do it on merit, and it did not matter if the person was Hispanic or black or gay or a communist or conservative.
Well, now let's be honest.
Soft socialist or a fascist.
Let's be honest, though, Fly Fox. When is the last time you saw a quality communist story?
Oh.
Anyway.
Sergei Eisenstein's Battleship Potemkin.
Is that a real thing?
Tarkovsky. How about Tarkovsky? He did some good stuff.
Well,
he was in exile. I don't know how.
He was in exile. There was all of Tarkovsky's stuff is about the individualist struggle against the establishment. So even Dexter's Lab.
But yes, Battleship Potemkin is a real thing. Sorry.
Oh, we'll have to talk about that because I'm curious to hear about it. But I don't want to interrupt Fly Fox too much with my stupid jokes. So
right. So all of those people were represented on the list put forward, and Larry himself is Portuguese, which is a Latino. So there was Asia. It didn't matter. The point was that it was based on merit and who they thought deserved it. So Eric Flitt, who is was a member of the Communist Party, the United States equivalent of the Communist Party, he was nominated by this voting bloc. Basically, it exposed the goal in part was not to necessarily cause some sweeping change in the publishing industry, or retake the industry from the gatekeepers, or whatever. Because honestly, Larry's a perfect example of that. Really, if you want to get your book out there and you're a conservative, it doesn't really matter. People will buy it. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't really about that, or keeping diversity out or anything like that. It was about putting identity politics and the right kind of messaging above merit. And so in exposing the fact that this small voting block was determining what nominations were going before the awards. Basically, how it works is the World Fantasy Convention is the one who gives out the Hugo Awards. It's done there. And anybody who buys a membership to the World Fantasy Convention in a given year then is eligible to nominate and vote on these awards. So you don't even have to go to the convention. You just buy a membership, you go online, and you nomination. So if you have a large enough voting block, you can put all the people that you want on the award, get them on the awards list, and then you're all voting in solidarity for who wins it. And a person, a lot of the times, is getting the award unless it so a year or something really popular out, like a unicorn, like a George R. R. Martin book or something.
I can feel the dinosaur boyfriend.
That was
coming.
The idea behind it.
Phrasing,
right? And basically,
I've had just enough gin to totally lose my composure over that.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So, it's all good. Then a unique individual who I have no respect for, a man by the name of Vox Day. That first part we're talking about was Sad Puppies. That was the name that Larry or somebody came up with. I can't remember who. Well, a unique individual who, again, I have no respect for, an open theist who I view as a damnable heretic, named Vox Day. He decided he was going to burn down the awards and screw everybody over because he hates everybody, and except Chuck Dixon, I guess. But
it's really hard to hate Chuck Dixon. He's such a nice guy.
Yeah. Right. So I hold nothing against Chuck or anybody that associates with Vox Day. I'm not going to guilt by associate anybody, but I personally don't like him. He made a separate campaign with a lot of his people that follow him called the Rabid Puppies. And his goal was to basically burn down the Hugos. And it all culminated in a year where the majority of the awards had no winner. That was no award given was what that he forced the hand basically of this other voting block to have a year where there was no award given for a good number of awards, and that was pretty much the end of it. It kind of petered out after that.
Let me ask this: how did they get no award given? Was it just like ties, or
no? The winners were.
You can vote. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, weren't the winners like a bunch of stuff that the Hugos didn't want to win, and so they basically it's kind of like when they did the Time magazine polls and 4chan rigged it to do some really like trolly stuff, and so they would just like either just pick what they wanted or just just
so like the whole vote faces
basically
declare like no contest.
Right, it's no contest. Basically, what Vox Day did was he even put stuff on there that they would have voted for. I think that the 3 body problem won the award, and the only reason Vox didn't put that on his list of nominees for his voting block to vote for was because he hadn't read it yet. So it wasn't it was more the fact that Vox put things on his list, and they didn't want him to win anything, or these bad thinkers to win anything. That they basically done their own awards, and you can choose to give no awards. So instead of voting for anybody, you vote for no award given. Basically declaring it that no work merited an award that year. And basically the narrative that surrounded it was that, oh, they hate diversity. You know, it's the same old stuff. They hate diversity, or they're racist, or whatever. And the reality is that every year the blocks that were put forth by the original people doing it, the Sad Puppies, quote unquote, campaign, was had a very diverse nominees. And so part of somebody that responded to Matt and I when we were talking on the Cross and I when we were talking on Twitter about this recent awards thing, they brought that up. Oh, the racists and all this stuff, and I almost responded, and then I thought, oh, what's the point? But like the idea that they were all racist or misogynist, or basically it's all just a little bit of research into who they were actually putting forth would show that to not be the case. The awards were diverse, but they were based on who they thought merited it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's an important discussion. That was part of the Gamergate conversation as well. The idea of merit versus media appeal, right? And the whole in the early days, when you're talking Doug Ernst, you're talking Captain Frugal, you're talking Englentine, you're talking even Zach, 2018 Zach. It was about not about clicks. It was about talking about the substantive issues, the nature of what makes a product good. And I think that's one of those things that because that's a big issue. Right. When it comes to, if you're talking about literature, if you're talking about narrative.
Well, and I think.
Did you?
It's definitely, obviously, it is a.
You're cutting out again, Fly Foxman.
It's very deep in thought.
That's what it is. But I was just saying, it's an issue. Yeah. It's an issue that I think.
Okay.
You can do it.
I'm going to start talking. So, well, I do think it's an issue we don't really have enough conversation about in our society about what makes something quality, right? And one of the big problems that I have with our current, what do you call it? The commentariat, both in terms of politics, but especially in terms of arts.
I like that term. That's good.
We don't really have a commentariat. We don't really have a conversation about what makes something good, right? We have conversations about why we like something, not about what makes it good. And I think that's.
There's a lot of even if it's not very deep, there's a lot of talk about should politics be in comics? Should your religious worldview be in comics, or lack of? Should your sexual identity be a big driving force of what you're writing in comics, or your racial identity? Maybe people haven't found like a very deep way of discussing that.
Well, and one of the things I think is, and we've talked about this on the stream before, Matt. I think that's the wrong question, right? Because those things are going to influence what you write. But the issue is despite that, does it still, reach out and touch the audience? Does it still reach out and speak truth through the nature of the art that you're telling? And that's one of those things. I'm not going to be necessarily into homosexual art because I have of my worldview, right? I don't mean visual art. I mean even in terms of story. Like that's an idea that I it's not going to appeal to me. But if you have similar ideas in terms of bros, like the nature of male to male friendship and how important that is, that's something that is a super important theme that I think gets misplaced because people want to force this a diversity narrative instead of talking about substantive things. Because everybody needs male friends. Every man needs male friends, whether they are attracted to males or not.
So,
and that's something that's universal. To every guy needs somebody to hold him accountable. Needs someone to be in his corner. Needs someone to push him to being a better dude.
to ping off of Matt's point, though, I mean, obviously, like just like saying that there's to remove politics from art or to remove those types of things from art is like saying that you could ever be unbiased, and it's like you're always going to have a bias. So I understand the principle behind that, but what Matt's talking about that I do agree with is the fact that the problem that people have in what I would call the countercultural comics collective movement right now, whatever label you want to throw at that, is the fact that people don't want their general audience art to be overly determined by any one ideology, because they want the sort of universal stories that kind of speak to the very general and broad audiences. And so when someone comes in with a very forced, specific perspective, that's where it doesn't really fly. And that goes for on the Christian side when who's the guy who wrote Archie and wanted to do the Christian Archie? I'm always forgetting his name.
I am Al Hurt, I think.
So so it goes for Christian Archie, and it also goes for
Al Hartley.
Hartley.
And it also goes for people who want to just make Captain America spew the Communist Manifesto. It's just it doesn't.
The thing is, I disagree with you entirely on that part of it. In those examples, right? Because
you'll get used to it, Twillis.
Yeah, that's okay.
Just like next time, like you can even DM him about how I'm totally impossible to discuss Civil War with in a civil battle.
No, it's a Civil War is fine. You and I actually agree a bit on that.
I am the least civil person on that subject.
It's Kingdom Come that we have a disagreement about.
So they're the same story. Anyway, moving on. That's part of my thing is they're the same story.
I just found out there's an Olsen sister in one of these, and that you guys have been making me watch these things for years now, and I'm furious.
I'm so confused. What are you talking about?
That's as much as I know. I mean, I don't know that much about the superhero stuff.
Oh, okay.
There's an Olsen sister.
Yeah.
In like 4 of these movies,
and
I'm just finding this out.
Which sister? I didn't even know.
Full House. It's the one who plays Scarlet Witch. She's an Olsen.
Oh, really?
Okay. I'm not the only one.
So
she was also in Godzilla. Yeah,
that's why she looks exactly like them.
Well, she would be younger because like they're like Twitlis's age. So
I think she's taller than they are, though. It's weird.
Yeah, she's like 89. I did a deep dive.
Twins are like that.
Confirm.
They on average tend to be shorter. But that doesn't matter. I totally lost track of what I was talking about.
You were saying that I was totally right.
Yeah,
no,
going back to Twitless thing.
I don't believe I have ever uttered those words.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh my god, I totally lost track of what I was talking about.
Whether this should be the people's
I remember
storytelling. I guess that
you were talking about Archie and about Captain America.
Yeah.
And first of all, Archie being rooted in the American tradition of the early 20th century, the Christian message is not a far stretch for Archie, and those weren't being published by Archie. That was under contract, so they were.
I'm trying to just use it as an example.
I know, but I'm saying they were specifically targeted to a direct market, right? Of evangelical Christians and people they wanted to share the comic with. So they weren't being sold on the shelf next to Archie fans. They were regular Archie fans weren't being inflicted it upon, unless they're being inflicted by their friends.
Okay, so then I'll use the example from the exact same author when he was going to have a storyline where I think Ghost Rider met Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So
right. I mean,
which would have been cool, by the way.
But
we actually talked about that on stream at one point. One of my other shows on religion. The other thing about communism is that communism is directly opposed to everything that America is built on. Like the very foundational philosophical elements that make this country great are dependent upon your relationship as an individual to your creator, right? So everything about making Cap's mouth communist propaganda is contrary to his character. In the same way that Cap giving up at the end of Civil War is contrary to his character, because Cap doesn't do things without thinking them through, and he doesn't do a thing unless he's willing to count the cost, right?
Or the symbol of America surrendering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, this isn't a hate stream for
Mark Millar.
Mike Miller, but it could start on that really quick. I gotta anyway.
Mike
But,
Miller.
But yeah, I think those are situations where the nature of the politics is in one case, or the religious, the nature of the propaganda, let's say, is in one case a fit for the character and the marketing, and in the other case is contrary to the character and the marketing, right? And so those were the things that you got to understand, right? So a great example, I think, from our modern milieu, right, is My Hero Macadamia, right, which is equal parts hilarious propaganda and satire and homage, right? It's all of those things in wonderful like coordination. And whether or not you like Donald Trump, you're gonna laugh because it's just funny, right?
I still think the point stands that in general entertainment, you kind of want less of, like I said, one particular viewpoint pushed so hard,
right?
Which is what we're seeing. And actually, the example I was trying to use with Hartley was trying to use the idea, so my example might have been a little less accurate, but the idea that like if you were to take a modern superhero and have them and push like a chick tract. So even if it were Daredevil, it would still be like, what are you doing in my superhero comics? Like I said, so even if you could argue it could kind of fit, I still wouldn't want a chick tract with Daredevil. Like, I'm sorry,
it's got to be true to the people, right? It's like, here's a really good example of, I think, the kind of thing you're talking about. I have a story that I am working on in the background, right? And it is equal parts superhero drama and slice of life story, right? Sure. And it's a slice of life story that happens to a girl in the middle of a superhero universe, and her life intersects with the superhero world in an unexpected way, right? Mm-hmm. That story will not be successful if I don't maintain authenticity to a slice of life story, right? It has to feel like Ghost World and like Action Comics. It can't be one or the other. It has to be both in order for the story to work.
Why are you emulating Ghost World?
No, that's an example. I don't. Okay, I'm not #1 Marmaduke fan. I can't name a single slice of life manga that would make my point.
Oh, okay. I can name a few.
Right, and the other slice of life comics that I know, I don't want to admit having read. So.
Love and Rocket.
So, but yeah, I mean, so it's got to have both of those, and it has to be true to both of those genres in order for the story to work. And I think that if you're telling a Captain America story, it has to be a Captain America story, one that talks about the sacrifice of the individual for the greater good, the idea that talks about the sovereignty of the individual within the context of a free society, one that talks about the tyranny of evil men against the innocent, right? You can't tell a Captain America story without being true to those elements, right? And America has to be the good guy, not necessarily in everything they do or every American, but that framework has to be true in order for Steve Rogers to make any kind of sense, right?
At least in spirit.
In spirit, right.
In spirit, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's even if it's just like the dream of America is the purest, and even if we don't reach up to that, like the whole Nomad arc, right? From the 70s, is that Steve Englehart? I don't remember. Somebody.
Isn't that like, just to push back from what I understand of what I think the opposing argument isn't the idea is that Captain America is being the past 5 or 6 years, they've been exploring how to deal with America as a country not living up to its ideals and maybe falling short of them dramatically, I guess, since election of Orange Man.
Yeah, well, and here it's the other
so
thing.
They're trying to
the honest fact about that I believe. I don't believe Captain America, Steve Rogers specifically, has been treated with respect by Marvel as a whole. I don't mean like in one individual story, right?
Yeah.
But I mean as a whole since Civil War.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like before Civil War,
it all comes back to Civil War.
It really does. I think it really does. I think that was the final nail in the coffin. That was the 616. I don't think Civil War was so bad at abusing every character in it. The only character that Mark Millar in the main series, I know there were spin-offs that people loved, but in the main series, right, the only character that was not written out of character was Sue Storm. That's the only one.
He wrote the Punisher in character.
He did not write the Punisher in character. Punisher would never suck up to Captain America.
No, I mean later when he just killed a whole bunch of people. I was like, that was pretty in character.
Well, he would kill them.
Okay.
I mean, in order to get to that point, so there could be a big betrayal, Steve had to betray what he thought was truth to hire the Punisher, and the Punisher had to suck up to Captain America. The Punisher may have a grudging respect for what Steve did in the past, but he would never align himself with any movement. That's ridiculous.
I think, in terms of acting in character, I felt like everyone was out of character except when I read it. I was like, the Punisher's in character because he's killing a bunch of people pretty without remorse. Everyone else is acting insane.
Yeah, I think the context in which the killing happened actually takes it out of character for him. It's just like Spider-Man, like siding up with anyone. Spider-Man would never side up with anyone. I mean, his love to be a free, even before that, I mean, his love to be a free agent is more important than anything.
Well, he sided with some folks in Maximum Carnage.
Yeah,
temporarily.
Temporarily. And that's the thing is, he has passing affiliations. His only real affiliation is Mary Jane or whatever. You know, that's part of the situation with that. He's to be an everyman. He has to be an everyman. You can't be a company man to be an everyman. That's part of the situation with the Spider-Man character. And the other thing, yeah. So I think that was a big deal. Is I think they really killed. I don't think Cap's been treated well. And like Brubaker did a good job with Cap before Civil War, and he brought Steve back as the secret Cap in his Secret Avengers. I thought that was a good run. In terms of treating Steve right, Steve still wasn't being able to fully represent America because he was busy being a spy. They were fun stories, but his place in the universe was compromised. And I really liked what Brubaker did with Bucky as Captain America. And he did a lot to really make Bucky a compelling character. It was really cool stuff. But still, in that context, he did ruin what Steve could be. And that was one of the things that like I think that like Steve is just such an important aspect to the Marvel universe that I think that they really compromised the entire structure of the narrative structure of the combined universe by telling that story.
So how about them Hugos?
Yeah.
just as an aside, like it's stuff like this that it's interesting, but I'll never pick up any of these comics because it's just so irrepressibly dense that I'll never catch up. I'll never even know what you guys are talking about, and I don't care to spend that much money to find out. Honestly, which is why comics are in such decline, because it's just the door has been locked. If you didn't jump in the 90s at the latest, it's too late. The train's moved on.
I actually don't think that's necessarily true. Individual storylines are self-contained enough where you can grasp it really well. As long as, I mean, like digging deep takes a little work, but I think you can appreciate a storyline fairly well.
So next on, Reese says you're wrong.
Yeah, I mean, short of like, spending like 2 weeks on Wikipedia.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly. I mean, and that's not a very fulfilling way to do it. And I'm not gonna sit here and tell you, you know, it's a mandatory reading list because honestly,
I'm sure there's a lot of great stories. It's clearly a lot of great stories, but they're just not. There's too many.
That in order to get a really appreciation for how terrible Civil War is, you would have to go and read a lot of good books and then a lot of bad books, and you'd end up as broken and sad as I am, and I don't want that for you.
Yeah.
So,
you could just start with the Ultimate Universe like I did.
Oh, the Ultimate Universe. I don't want to get into that.
Cute.
I don't want to get into that. That's too deep a well to get into. Although, if you really want to talk about it, it does perfectly explain why I hate Brian Bendis, but that's a different story. But anyway, one of the things that, yes, Neo, Captain America has been a doormat for Marvel Comics for almost a decade.
Well, because he represents America, and people hate him.
100% true.
The writers hate America, so he's the symbol. Like, of course, they're going to treat him like trash.
Yeah. And one also last subject on this sliver of Marvel canon. One More Day did happen about a year after Civil War as a way to undo the stupidity of Civil War in Spider-Man's canon.
Oh, that's right. It broke it even
Russ,
more.
Douglas and I have talked about this, and he's talked about it with other people on stream.
Even I know this broke it. Yeah.
Where this is the situation that broke Spider-Man. I disagree. I actually think Spider-Man broke at the end of the Clone War, and this was the point of no return. I think that there was, up until that point, there was an era to save Spider-Man, and here's where they killed it. Where he's just a ruined character and will never work again. And if you're still buying Spider-Man, I'm sorry. I think that's a chumpish thing to do. So
I still like Spider-Man.
Well, I just think you should be buying the half Hispanic, half black Spider-Man. It sounds like he's better. Sounds like we got a good replacement. Right?
Back to the Hugos.
Yeah. I can't even bait him.
Because one of the things we had was, okay, so we have the setup about what the Hugos had been. And
should we see this girl's acceptance speech?
I would love that.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Yes, we can.
If Matt can share it on screen, we can totally share it. As long as he clicks the share audio. Yeah.
As long as he clicks the share audio button that I just found out about today. So
Nerdrotic shared it. And I remember Sweetcast was talking about it, and they found on stream the name. I feel bad. We're going to talk about it, and we're not going to be able to name her or her books, which is going to be.
Is this when George R. R. Martin got like everyone's name wrong?
Yeah, okay. Which I did look into. It is a little more complicated. No.
It's funny that a fantasy author who names things like fantasy names would be like, oh, I don't know how to pronounce this.
Yeah. Yeah. Apparently, he did. They did give him a pronunciation guide, and he just didn't bother. So I don't know. Either he's racist or he's like a 74-year-old man. I don't know.
At least one of those things is true.
Did he get drunk? That would have been hilarious.
I have no reason to believe that George R. R. Martin is racist, although I do know he's a nihilist. So.
Oh wait, did I? Oh crap!
I feel like Martin is just cheap in some ways. Like, there's some elements of his craft that I respect, but like I think he was for these cheap literary devices, and it's like I can see what you're doing, and it's like oh, you're making this trap, and it's like I don't like trap writing.
No traps.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got it set up, and I think I have audio shared.
Well, fortunately, Twitless, my stream is not well watched, so none of your normals will take and clip it and make you look bad. So,
yeah, it's a safe space here.
We're safe.
We're safe in my bubble of anonymity. Before we watch that, Sporkman Studios says, sadly, it's the same with Peter and Iron Man about how it's Civil War kind of wrecked it. I believe is what he's talking about, and I 100% agree. Iron Man is a really tough character. And I think part of the situation is Iron Man should have a limited arc. I believe Peter should too, but there's only so many really good Iron Man stories to tell.
That would make it more accessible for normies like me too.
And that's one of the traps. That's one of the traps that Western comics have fallen into is the rotating time. But that's a whole different thing.
I actually disagree.
Oh
no, but
let's talk about that in a second.
Sure, no, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't want to get into it. So, Matt has a video. Let's watch this video. Let's see where we get to. Go ahead and play it, Matt. Let's see if this works.
Just say quickly.
Okay, so she has like ESMR voice, so you're gonna have to like listen and not cringe because she's whispering the entire time. But I think it should be.
The Saturn Award is the award for the best new writer. But if I were talking to a new writer coming to the genre in 2020, I would tell them, well, if you are an author of color, you will very likely be paid only a fraction of the advance that white writers are getting. You will be pigeonholed, you will be miscategorized, you will be lumped in with other authors of color whose work doesn't remotely resemble yours. The chances are very high that you will be sexually harassed at conventions or the target of racist microaggressions, or very often just overt racism. People will mispronounce your name repeatedly and in public, even people who are on your publishing team. Your cover art will be racist, and you'll have to push against that. And the way people talk about you and your literature will be tied to your identity and your personal trauma instead of the stories you're actually trying to tell. And
What?
if I had known all of that when I went into the industry, I don't know if I would have done it. So I think that the best way that we can celebrate new writers is to make this industry more welcoming for everyone.
Oh my gosh.
Thanks for the award, racists.
First of all, yeah, it is. It is a little ungracious, but at the same time, like, let's stop for a second and
think about. There's a lot there.
This is the thing that I was so excited to talk about today, right? Is that, you know, back in the Sad Puppy days, there were a group of people that said, you know, this whole thing is being run by insiders who are pushing agendas over quality, right? Yeah. This woman says, I have been pigeonholed because I'm an Asian woman and I cannot express myself outside of the context of being an Asian woman. And everything and everybody is judging me because I am an Asian woman, which is the exact issue.
That's what you want people to be saying right now, right?
That whole thing. She wants to be more welcoming, which means that and based upon the context of her statement, says, judge me as a writer, not as an Asian woman. Can you imagine one philosophy in the Western world that has been saying this for 120 years?
Right? So one thing I will add is the fact that it's kind of like where it's you can never reach 100% unbiased.
Right.
I don't think you can ever reach 100% meritocracy, because that kind of like implies that there is 100% objectivity to all art, and it's like people from Asia are going to value Asian art for cultural reasons, and they're going to judge things through their own standards and probably rate Asian art higher. Like that's just going to be a thing that's going to happen. And so in the West, we have a predominantly white culture that things are going to skew a little bit that way, no matter how hard you try.
See, I'm gonna disagree with you in 3 words. My Hero Academia.
I said it's going to skew. I think exceptions don't disprove the rule.
No,
but he's American,
right? But my issue is that this story, which is wildly popular in America, and it's not just the story, the whole genre of manga over the last 20 years has blown up. It's ridiculously huge, and manga has been telling Asian stories and strip mining Western stories and reinterpreting them for 40 years. Right. So this is and we borrow from them and they borrow from us. Right. 2 of the best Westerns, the best old style Western was the Magnificent Seven, and the best new style Western was Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Both of them based on Kurosawa pictures, right? So,
no,
so
wrong.
No, that's right. The Fistful of Dollars was the one. Sorry,
I
mistake.
Yeah, Yojimbo. Yeah,
Yojimbo.
Yojimbo, which was based on a Dashiell Hammett book.
Ooh, yeah, that's true. Red Harvest has a lot similarities. Good call. But not as much. I mean, like Fistful of Dollars was like carbon copied off.
Right. Well, and so you have this. It's a good point to bring up Kurosawa in general, because Kurosawa's favorite director is John Ford, right? So he was looking at the American Westerns and he was saying, how can I interpret this in the context of Asian, specifically Japanese culture and history? How can I make Western? And he makes things like Seven Samurai and Yojimbo, which then come and influence the American art form in the West for the Western, and then it's a cycle. That's what it should be,
right?
But
and
when
he's a complicated
cultural appropriation,
Right. And that's the thing. The whole idea of cultural appropriation, right, is, to me, it's a silly idea, because culture is appropriation. I mean, like, that's what culture is, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's learned from other people.
Because there's
born
nothing
with
new
it.
under the sun, right? And this is one of the things that we set down when we first started doing Ideal Comics in 2005. We had a couple of stories, we had a framework for universe. We set down a mission statement, right? A philosophy for the company. And one of the things we said is, there are no new stories. There are just new ways of telling the same story, right? That we believe that that's true. That the reason there aren't any new stories is because they all connect with the human experience. So our job is not to try to reinvent the wheel. It's to be authentic and to tell exciting stories authentically. Not that we're trying to just rip off other stories, but there's going to be these themes if they are consistent and true.
Which is a very, someone from your culture and your time period would say that. Even though I like what you're saying, you wouldn't have said that in the 12th century.
Well, no, it's because they didn't have the same. They didn't have the same. Well,
so one thing I want to add is that
I don't think somebody would have said that in the 12th century. But if you look at a lot of what was going on in the 15th century, that's how stories were being told, right? That's, I mean, 15th.
Sure, I'm just confirming you're a creature of your society. Well, I'm agreeing with you.
Right.
Well, I'm an American. I like it.
Right. Yeah. That's fine. I'm just saying that the point I wanted to bring up is the fact that when it comes to art, like, there's so much of it that can be tied to your cultural identity and your language. So, like, when it comes to stuff like haiku, it's like a lot of haiku wouldn't, I'm not saying that we don't recognize its artistic quality, but it doesn't resonate the same way with us as it does in its native tongue. And because of that, when we judge it, it's like, as Americans, we're probably gonna lean more towards Western poetry when we look at our quality art, and probably less towards haiku, because we just can't connect to it without knowing the original tongue that was spoken and that connects with how it speaks.
And I think it even moves beyond that too in a lot of ways, because we have lost poetry as a culture largely at least in America. Like, poetry is just a thing people do in college, and it's not about skill, it's not about discipline, it's not about craft. It's about trying to impress,
slam poetry.
I think a lot of that can be tied to, it can.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
That can be tied to modernity and post-structuralism, and doing away with.
So,
I guess if you can hear me, I'm saying that.
Yeah, you were saying, if I caught you right, that a lot of it ties to the whole concept of post-structuralism and the idea of value neutral art.
Right. So the basically, when I took poetry in college, if I worked in structured meter and a rhyming scheme of some sort, even if it was well done, I was told to revise it and to do away with the meter, to do away with my traditional poem, and basically to go more abstract and more postmodern, and basically you wind up with a piece of garbage that basically I literally wrote a stream of conscience nonsense poem meant to mean nothing. And that was valued as the best thing I'd written. And so that's when I realized, that's why poetry is dead.
Yeah.
So, well, I actually like some poems of open form, but I feel like you could put just as much craft into an open form poem. I'm thinking of The Fish. Who wrote The Fish? I'm blanking on her name, but it's just like where she deliberately crafts the entire poem to flow like the ocean in fish scales, and so it doesn't have any traditional rhyme or meter, but there's so much craft that goes into it.
And a good writer in general. A good writer in general is going to form something that sounds good. They can craft it, even if it is stream of consciousness. They're putting words together based on their natural style.
Yes, and I think that there is definitely artistry in like free verse. I've written quite a bit of it, but that doesn't necessarily my issue with modern poetry, and with art in general is not the exception that proves the rule. It's the idea that the rules don't matter. right?
Mhm.
The idea that like that there's can't be an objective. There have to be subjective ideas, but the idea that there can't be objective ideas as well.
And
go
that
along with
is a rule, and that's the only rule. Yeah.
right. Yeah, they're the only
Right.
rules that there are no rules.
Yeah.
And it's like
It was Marianne
Axiomatic.
Moore, by the way, is the poet I was thinking of. Marianne Moore, the fish, which is anyway. Oh, we dropped somebody.
well, it looks like
No.
Well, okay, so to tie this back into the speech that we just heard,
Yeah,
in between her crying me a river, the idea that
don't be too hard on that.
oh no, I'm gonna be very hard.
Because here's the thing: is like her whole idea of like her whole paradigm is broken, right? She is broken.
I think she's in a state of crisis. I think it's an existential. She's at a road where she can't decide to go right or left, as it were.
and like everything she's told has been a lie. Right?
Victim narratives make me angry.
Sure.
But
Sure.
here's
She's still clinging to that for sure.
here's
really
the thing.
And here's the thing about that. Before you get on that, she really is a victim. She's a victim of an ideology that is broken. In the same way that us Gen Xers were told, you can do anything. And when we grew up,
She's been privileged up into a box.
When we grew up and we found out hard that we can't do anything we set our mind to, like the whole like Gen X slacker mentality was coming to grips with the fact that we had been lied to since the 70s and that we had to work harder than we realized, and that hard work was something we weren't scared of, but we're not prepared to do by the society that raised us. And this isn't not just our parents, but like television and movies and everything lied to us and lied to everybody who came after us too. We got the first bunch of that, and everybody else got it worse. So this has been lied to.
This is where I'll quote Philip. Actually, I won't quote Philip Larkin, but he wrote this amazing poem called "This Be the Verse," and to me, it's just it's the perfect.
I wish you would. I wish you would quote it.
Are you familiar with
No,
the Verse?
I've not heard it, but it sounds amazing.
How family friendly we have to be on this stream? Because
not. I mean, keep it minimal. But if it's
okay. This is Philip Larkin. Okay, so they fuck you up, your mom and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with the faults they had and add some extra just for you. But they were fucked up in their turn by fools in old style hats and coats, who half the time were soppy stern and half at another's throats. Man hands on misery to man, it deepens like a coastal shelf. Get out as early as you can and don't have any kids yourself. Ooh. So it's a pretty dark poem, but like I love the sentiments of the first two verses, which is basically just like, yeah, you have your problems, but guess what? Their parents had problems, and it's just forever and for the human race. So I mean, I do love that sentiment, and that's where I go, cry me an effing river. And on top of that, here's the thing: the fact that if we're gonna acknowledge the fact that she is a person of color or writer of color, whatever she wanted to call herself. And she has managed to win an award in a white space. That's even more celebratory, because she's actually, that'd be like me winning an award in a Japanese space. That would actually mean that my quality of work was recognized by another culture. I would take that as a deeper honor. She's choosing, she has a choice here. She has a choose to be honored or to be offended. And she chose to be offended like 9,001 times. And I don't have any sympathy for that.
Right. But, and this is once again comes back to the thing that Matt and I were talking about, which wanted to get this thing here. Her reaction is a natural consequence of what the Hugos wanted to be.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see this sort of weird irony to it. And it's like, it is literally like, this is what you have created.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, earlier in the week, one of the things I nicknamed the stream is be careful what you wish for. Because this was the situation that she's presented with.
In a way, the Hugo Awards have asked her to be this way, to receive it in this fashion, and she's actually kind of honoring their wishes by absolutely nuking them in the middle of her acceptance speech. That's what they wanted. Yeah, but at the same time, like, she is realizing. Because it's just like it's incoherent in a way, because she's saying things about how she doesn't want to be thought of as primarily a person of color and only speaking those kind of stories. You know, things that you and I, like people on this stream, might be more open to hearing. And then at the same time, she's talking about how, I don't know, just things that sound like maybe far left talking points or something.
Well, yeah,
So I don't think she's thought through a lot of these things, honestly. But I think that she can tell that there's something wrong and she doesn't know why. And so she's shooting her shotgun left and right and seeing who she can hit, because she's very frustrated that she's been given something that is different than what she was expecting. And so I'm kind of like trying to encourage, like, yes, more of that. Yes, get it out, and then you'll figure out after the dust settles that this was actually the wrong approach to begin with.
I feel like you're being too generous. I feel like you're being too nice.
I might be. Twitless is telling me I'm being too nice. That's a problem.
So,
I know I've really gone too far.
So first of all, Fly Fox, I'm sorry I left you in the green room. I ranted and forgot to click the button when I was finished. I was talking with my hands, and then I got done and I was listening instead of clicking you in. So I'm sorry. Second of all, I think part of the situation is that, like you're talking about, like she needs to figure out all of this stuff and probably hasn't thought it all through. And I think that that's 100% true. And I don't think you're being too nice, because, I think
like, she's a kid. She's clearly, what is she, like 20 or something? Like,
I have no idea. I've stopped being able to tell how old people are when I hit about 37, and everybody under 28 looks like a child to me. So, which is why, like, I just think that's, everybody looks like a child, and I can't tell the difference between like a 17-year-old and a 25-year-old.
You kids, get off my comic books.
Everybody looks like an infant. I don't know.
But you can hear the struggle, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
That seems
Spider-Man died in the Clone Wars.
And she,
yeah,
this is true.
Sorry,
I just said that.
amazing.
Damn you for mocking me. Not really. But no, I think that's she's going to have to figure it out. And I believe 100% free will. She has to figure out where she's going to go with it. Is she going to accept the narrative that she's this kind of person, that she has to be fit into that kind of category? Or is she going to reject that and define her own self? Right. And like I said, this is an idea. There is a philosophy that goes back to the 1840s. Am I not your brother? Right. That whole abolitionist statement saying humanity is more important than race. And we have lost that as a society since probably, I mean, there were bubblings of it, but growing up in the 90s, that was like the clarion call of everybody who wanted to see a better America, was the idea, and this is a dated idea, and I don't agree with the phrasing anymore, but the idea of being colorblind, right? That was the talking points for everybody who cared about race relations in the 90s, was the idea that we want to see people as people. We want people to express their inner self. We do not want to judge people by their skin, because their skin doesn't matter. So if you were white, if you were black, if you were Asian, if you were into reggae, if you were into rap, if you were into rock and roll, we don't care. We need to come together and be humans first, and then talk about once we acknowledge and appreciate our humanity, then we can share our cultures. Then we can take what's great from your culture and add it to what's great from my culture and become better humans, become better Americans. And that was the culture that I grew up in.
Humanity first.
Yeah,
that's the culture that gave us Sublime and rap
and
rock,
the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and all that.
Limp Bizkit. Yeah. It's just,
and okay.
Yeah.
Limp Bizkit, maybe not great,
but it's people coming. Yeah, there's like
people coming
5
together.
Genres.
Yeah.
Smashed together, and it was kind of
I'm just not a personal fan.
Whether or not she's entirely responsible, she's bought into and she's espousing a type of narcissism, again, that I have very little pity for, because when she said things, you're going to be sexually assaulted, I have to press X to doubt now in today's world, because sexual assault means in the Warren Ellis situation, it just means that I dated people and they're jilted lovers, and now they hate me, and therefore sexual assault. So like,
I have to interrupt you for a second to just revel in you defending Warren Ellis.
Oh my gosh, I hate why this world is so upside down. I have to defend freaking Warren Ellis. I want to cancel him so hard, but
I mean, I think he's a perv and really gross, but yeah,
there's a difference between being a perv and being a criminal.
Right,
yes, exactly.
Like, when I read through some of the accusations, and it was nothing but, I think this man is sexually promiscuous, and it's like,
yes,
that's not a crime.
Yeah,
and they were trying to redefine like sexual law, like in real time on the internet, and it's like, and
once again, this comes from fairly conservative Judeo-Christian background. You're right, it's gross. I've been saying that since I was a child.
I mean, to be fair, like I said, he had it coming in a sense. It's like if you have a was it hell hath no fear, like a woman scorned, and he scorned like 100 women, like surprise. Like, yeah. So I'm not saying like it didn't in a fashion. He didn't like plant the seeds of his own destruction.
And really, I have to back up. Not of speaking as a flawless person. There's a standard that I don't follow up to, but the standard is true.
I mean, it's just at this point, like with Warren Ellis, it's just freaking common sense. Yeah. It's like it's the plot. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I've read this as the plot of many films where it's like man 2 times on women gang up to get him, and it's like, dude, you played yourself like in like a 90s movie. Is it like was it John Tucker Must Die or something?
Yeah,
like,
John Tucker Must Die, First Wives Club.
It's like come on, man.
I can't think of any others, but there's been several.
What did you expect? But that being said, it's like the victim narrative is an active lie that plays to your own sense of narcissism, and she has chosen to, and it's used for power. And again, it's an insidious weapon, and that's why I have so little sympathies for her. I'm like,
that's one of the situations where she is right now in a place where this is I genuinely believe this is the only lens through which she has to see the world, because this is the lens that she believes right now, and the lens she's been instructed in. Right, so that's the only lens she has. Mm-hmm. She is at a point where she is saying, I don't want to be judged as an Asian woman. And she can either say, I'm going to continue along the path of those who will judge me as an Asian woman, or I will go ahead and find a way to be judged as a human being. And those are the choices she has to make. But I don't fault her for buying into something that is so ubiquitous that she believes it to be true.
See, I'm not telling you, if she wants to be an Asian writer for Asian readers, like, more power to you. She's complaining because it's like, I'm an Asian writer and white writers tell me I'm Asian. Yeah. And it's like, what? Like, what are you offended at? Like,
well, maybe another way to say it is that it appears like she's trying to figure out how to still keep the power that she has as a noted writer, and yet I don't want to say like kick the ladder now that she's climbed it, because I don't think she's realized that she did climb a particular ladder that was set there by a majority white establishment, I guess, from her perspective at least.
She sees the establishment as majority white, but and this is the thing she doesn't quite understand, I don't believe, is that it's not that the establishment is majority white, is that the majority establishment happens to be white and is deeply racist because they only see the subcategories of humanity. Yeah. And she clearly wants to be a writer, not an Asian writer, right? Yeah. She wants to say, I don't want to be shoehorned into writing about samurais and dragons and kung fu. I want to write about anything that I want to write about.
That itself is a kind of a, I'm not saying you are making this assumption, but if she has that assumption, then she's being racist against herself, because the Asian experience is so much beyond, samurai and all the stereotypes. Yeah. Like just being an Asian in Asian culture and your life and just speaking your truth, as it were, as an Asian, and like, more power to you. Not every white person's going to get that, and that doesn't make them wrong, just like it doesn't make you wrong for not getting why white people do the crazy crap that they do. Mm-hmm. you come from different backgrounds. That's what diversity is actually.
And there's certain level when talking about like, you know, she talked about, you know, cover artists are going to have racist presentations. Of course, what she really means is stereotypical, because the cover art is supposed to be selling a particular type of image, and we already have shorthands. But
yes,
you can't see that context. It's just like,
you don't
write a novel.
I'm trying to find it now.
Pull up a cover first, because like I do not even trust her estimation of that, because like
what I'm saying is, like, in terms of marketing, right? You're not going to see a novel about Iron Age Ireland that doesn't have knotwork or shamrocks on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Lucky Charms.
But knotwork wasn't popular in Iron Age Ireland, right? That came later during the Christianization of Ireland, as it absorbed art styles and adapted art styles from the Middle East. So like knotwork, which I think became a fullness in Ireland, in Irish illuminated manuscripts, had its start in the Middle East and what would become Turkey, in Greece, in the Etruscan period, and forms that changed and modified and became, I think, better. I think Irish knotwork is the pinnacle of that form that happened in the 7th to 9th century there, but that's not where it started. And so that's one of those things that, like, those shorthands that we have, it's just like, it's not a Scottish novel if there's not a kilt, even though the kilt wasn't established until the 1500s.
Yeah.
That's just what it was. Like, you know, Brave has kilts that were anachronistic, but that's the shorthand we have for Scotland. And I'm sure that's the exact kind of thing she's talking about.
Yeah. Okay. I found it, by the way. I put it. I
saw that.
Yeah, let's share screen that.
So she's writing a book called The Poppy War. So let's get this. So
yeah.
I don't know how much she's volunteering to write as an Asian about Asian stories, or if she's
so we don't know if
being
this is
forced to.
Right, and we don't know if this is the cover that she has a problem with, because a lot of times they'll have alternate covers. But if we're judging this cover, it's like, what is your problem? I'm sorry, like, oh my gosh,
it looks really nice.
Yeah, like, what is racist about this? Like,
well, and that's it is. I don't know. I don't think it is racist, because it's not saying all Asians are involved with poppies. It's not saying all Asians are archers. This is just an example.
It's a minimalist cover.
It's very minimalist.
Yeah,
and maybe
the race is very ambiguous, I think.
Well, and I'm wondering if maybe she didn't even like the title, right? Maybe she wanted to give it a different title that didn't seem so whatever, right?
Oftentimes you don't. Yeah, you usually don't get.
If you get a book deal, the editor says this will sell.
See, that's the thing. Is like she's claiming oppression, but she's one of the most privileged people on the planet. If she's a published author who gets advances, like Matt, how many $10,000 advances have you received in your illustrious career?
Yeah, 0. Yeah,
it's just like
I was 2 weeks away from one once, then the whole deal fell through.
Oh. Okay, so like I write for academia. We're lucky to get offered $200 or a free copy of the book. Like I'm sorry. Again, cry me a river, and you won't get a full advance. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you privileged girl.
On the Sweetcast review of this was saying that she kind of skimmed entirely over the concept of whatever her agent was negotiating on behalf of her. Like, so part of her advance and all that sort of thing doesn't have to do with her race so much as whether or not she was willing to be kind of aggressive in negotiations or just accept whatever they.
Well, yeah, I mean, like a lot of that stuff, if you've got an agent, it's up to them to negotiate that.
This woman defines passive aggressive. She waited until she won an award to then F you. Yeah. Like, I'm sorry if I'm playing the villain here.
But no. That's fair.
But, I mean, I'll be sympathetic. But I mean, that's part of the thing is like I said, I mean, like, she's been sold a bill of goods that is false, right? She right now in this moment in time is wallowing in the falsehood and in her like shattered dreams about that. But that doesn't,
because she's saying things that are not popular to say.
Yeah,
I think, and that's where I feel like there's a spark of originality where she is struggling. It's a struggle speech, you know, because she really is saying like I don't think people. Some of the things, a lot of the things she said are standard boilerplate victim narrative stuff, but some of the things she said are not things that you just kind of pick up passively. So I think like to voluntarily say that if people of color are only allowed to write people of color content, and that people are only going to address you in that way, and they're still going to screw it up all the time, but they're going to be intensely focused about how you look and your particular background. I don't think you normally say that unless you really feel that way.
And there is the other side of that too. And this is, I think, something that if I feel like that Twitless is feeling under the surface of this, is that there is a motivation amongst the whole identity politic to perpetuate and to keep it evergreen, the idea of oppression, right? So we want it.
That's going to be the last thing to go.
We
obviously.
want it to continue to be oppression because that's what justifies our continued anger over it. And I think that there may be an element in there in that, but I'm also willing to grant somebody the grace to say, well, you're either perpetuating the narrative or you're realizing you've been used by a system that wants to treat you like a toy.
You're a victim of the victim narrative.
Yes.
Is there?
I think that's a situation where, like, it's true. Like, it's 100% true that abusers abuse others, right? Hurt people. That's a fact, right? Not every person who's been hurt or been abused ends up with that, but almost everybody who is an abuser, who is an abusive person, has been through that themselves.
I think Flyflox had something to say.
Yeah. Well, I think the problem is, like, I hear what both Kratz and Twitless are saying, and I think both of them have good points. Basically, here she is. She's trying to hold on to a viewpoint while she's starting to see the cracks in it. So she doesn't have the framework to interpret being treated as a token, because and how it makes her feel once she realizes, oh wait, I didn't win this because I'm of the quality that I put or the work that I did put into it. I'm winning it because I'm an Asian woman, but she still wants to hold on to her identity politics, and so you can see that struggle. But at the same time, she is wrong. She's in the wrong, you know, and so it's this weird thing where, like, she can't quite interpret what she's feeling and what she's seeing because she's still trying to hold on to that identity politics and that intersectionality and all of that stuff that is ultimately to blame for what she's starting to feel.
Yeah. And she has to decide whether or not she can even wrap her head around a world that doesn't involve that identity. Yeah. And that's part of the thing, like that like I said, I have a lot of sympathy for, because, like,
that's tough.
It's tough to break from your entire worldview that's been just ramrodded into you for your entire educational career, because this is what we teach people, you know.
Do you know what's really ironic though? Like, I found a video. I highly encourage you guys to take a look at it. I don't know if we should on stream or not, but it's also at Comic-Con, and it's called, I think, Reclaiming Native American Narratives. And you would think that's a social justice title, but when there's 3 Native American people who work in comics and in art, and they don't have a victim narrative. They literally just start talking about their work, and they say, we're trying to preserve our Native American indigenous cultures. And we published a Native American graphic novel. We found a Native American publisher and a Native American printer. Go us. And we're trying to preserve our culture. And it's so inspiring. And they're like, we have a Native American story with Native American, like, everything. We wanted to be a Native American project. And there's none of this, we need to make Captain America a Native American, or we need to spin this, or I'm a victim. That the 3 of them are really chill, and they just talk about how much they love their native culture, which is obviously they're from that culture. Obviously they would love it. And they talk about how much they love creating art from their own perspective. And they just, it just grows out of that. And it's so respectable. And it's the absolute opposite of what this woman is doing. And again, it's what real diversity in art should look like.
See, I love that. We have to watch that. Because,
okay,
like, I mean, I'll find it. Okay, here's part of the situation. I do want to watch the other video you were sharing too because it looks hilarious.
Oh, it is.
But, like, here's part of my personal journey, right? I grew up in Oklahoma and here in Nebraska. Those are the places that I grew up. And my grandparents lived in Tahlequah, which is the capital, the seat of the Cherokee Nation. And my grandma went out of her way to try to minister God's love to people who were Native and people and Mexican immigrants. And so, like, I spent my childhood surrounded by these people from other cultures and other languages and learning about these people. And then I came up to Nebraska, where we have a significant Lakota population. And so I've known people. And so, like, the Indian experience is something that I care about a lot, even though it's not part of my culture. I care about it a lot. And I get real mad when people like take that whole thing for granted. So I'm really interested to see.
I've got it shared if you want to watch a couple minutes of it.
I do want to do that. How long is it?
So honestly, you can get
41 minutes. We don't have time for that.
The good stuff is within the first like 2 minutes.
Okay.
The really good stuff. So like you only need to watch about 2 minutes of it to get like the really good impression here. You can hear it, right?
Yes.
Alco, my name's Johnny Bear Contreras. We're here on the Stamp Reservation located in Valley Center, California. I'd just like to welcome everybody, and what an honor it is to
like these guys already.
These two gentlemen.
I know,
here,
right?
And all of you out there. You guys would like to go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Sure. My name is Cheg Lowry. I am of Yurok, Maidu, and Achumawi ancestry from Northern California, and I am very honored to be here, a guest here at Mr. Contreras' home and on ancestral Kumeyaay land, and I'm here to talk about comics.
Boom.
It's great. I'm Kelma Latin from the Paula tribe, and it is an honor to be here with these two gentlemen and to do this for Comic-Con. Wow, like,
right?
Yeah.
Cool.
So this is great.
You're so chill.
Honored to be here.
So we've been having discussion on the sidelines here while getting things set up, and just looking at different perspectives in our personal journey and getting to this point, and where we're able to embellish, bring the culture to the forefront, using different using all different sorts of artistic venues, from the comics, from my field doing sculpture and different types of artistry. Cheg's doing his version of the different. I'll let you explain that part.
Sure. Well, I'm a graphic novelist. I've written a 120-page story called Soldiers Unknown, and very honored by the fact that it's published by the Great Oak Press, which is owned by the Pechanga tribe here in Temecula, and it was printed by Tribal Print Source, which is owned by the Southern California Chairman's Association. So, and I worked with the really cool artist, Rasan Ekadal. So a lot of the production is all Native owned. I'm a big proponent of us as individual Indigenous artists, as we honor our cultures and where we come from, but using our individual talents to be progressive and share stories and histories. And the military history in my family is something that's guided my work for many years.
Yeah, so that's basically the crux of. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but like just those two minutes right there, and it's like instantly, it's everything that they're crying about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that hit me when I watched this. It was like, it was inspiring in all the right ways, and it's everything that they're crying about, what they want, and they're just doing it.
They're just doing it, yeah. And here's one of the interesting things. Like this is, once again, speaking as a '90s kid, right? Like if you ever read Dwayne McDuffie or I'm going to forget his name, the guys that founded Milestone back in the '90s, right?
Yep.
That was their whole mission. Was like, you know, there's a whole bunch of us African American, Black African artists, comic artists who've been working for DC for years. we're going to do our own thing. We're going to start our own company. We're going to invent a new kind of coloring technology so we can capture the various tones of black skin, so that we can go ahead and give a super saturated look to our comics, and we can give them an extra level of professionalism. And like, if you ever get a chance to like check out Milestone Comics, they are like hardcore 90s superhero action, but at the same time, they're just great stuff, and they have this different type of cultural eye than you're going to get with the mainstream stuff. But because they had these established, Dennis Cowan was one of the other guys. There were three main guys who were founders: Dennis Cowan and Dwayne McDuffie, and I forget the third guy. Maybe I'll remember him since I remember Dennis. But anyway, with it, that they'd all been established pros, and so they knew everybody involved. They had a distribution deal with DC, so they were able to get into every place that DC Comics sold as contractors. And they ended up, the company didn't quite get the production numbers that they needed, and it ended up folding, and DC ended up buying them out, and then not using their characters very effectively or enough, because they were great stuff. I don't know. Am I the only person who's read Milestone Comics?
No,
I've heard about it.
Blood Syndicate.
Oh man, they're really good. They're really good.
Your boy used to talk about them.
Oh man, really good stuff. And one of the great things is too is that, and they weren't just some sort of progressive narrative. There were some characters that had progressive politics, some that had a very different opinion at it. You've got Icon, the kind of the black Superman character, had been born as a slave, and so he came up. He was immortal, so he'd had several lifetimes, but he came up out of slavery, and he was a dyed-in-the-wool Republican, Frederick Douglass style Republican, and even in the late 90s was still like the super conservative guy who just couldn't die, and had had all this kind of stuff. And then like his sidekick Rocket was just this street kid who like was kind of from the ghetto, Democrat by default kind of thing, and there was conflict between them based on their worldview. And because Icon was immortal, right? So there was a whole bunch of dichotomies in that.
I have a really crazy memory of Milestone, which was the Milestone DC crossover where they folded them into one universe, and where Shadow Thief got his butt plugged.
Oh gosh,
that's why I remember it. It's a really weird moment in comics.
And actually, and here Neo says Dwayne McDuffie understood actual diversity, and he really did. And it was because it wasn't just about one version of color idea and one color identity. There was multiple ideas and layers that worked into it, and Hardware was kind of the Milestone answer to Iron Man. But it was about a guy whose intellectual property was stolen by a corporation, and so he was getting his payback out of it. And man, it was amazing. So,
okay, I have a bit. Okay, this is a little half baked, so forgive me, but I have kind of an idea that a lot of what has happened to comics in the last 20 years, it's really a function of a nerd from the nerd table at the cafeteria being invited by the popular kids to come over and sit with them. And so expectations suddenly came on what that nerd, comics was allowed to now do in order to continue to be at that table. Like he was invited over, like you just got upgraded. Right. You can now date popular girls, but now you have to start dressing a certain way. You have to start using different lingo and that sort of thing. And the tension of not being able to hang out with his old friends, maybe having to ditch them to try and appeal to the cool kids. I think that's kind of like, I don't even know if it's a left-right thing. I think it typically is really just like someone got upgraded. So really corporations found that nerds like to buy lots of stuff so they can be marketed to better than jocks for
they
this
have
particular
money.
Yeah, so like let's make them popular so that we can get them to spend even more money. And but paradoxically we end up losing those nerds because they like, in a way, like nerds tend to be more tolerant in general than popular kids. because they have to band together. They have to learn to tolerate each other because that's all each other has. Popular kids can afford to be very hyper narrow in terms of what they're going to tolerate because it's a power struggle and they're at the top. So that there's that going on too with comics. So there's a lot of this stuff that like it's always addressed in the outskirt. Like there's always been diverse comics because it's always been, well, I don't know. I mean, Reese is going to disagree with me, but I was going to say it's always been an outsider's kind of medium. And there's been times when it's been very much in the cool kids medium too, but it hasn't been for, I don't know, maybe at least 25 years. And so I guess to bring it up to like a huge, like normie vision, I'm going to say normie vision.
Oh no.
To bring it center stage to be like multi-million-dollar box hit theater productions, it has to become super popular. Mm-hmm. And now in order to make it legitimate as a medium, you have to make it super woke, which just happens to be the way. I mean, it would go the opposite.
I don't think they need to. I think that's the belief.
No, yeah. I mean, they're just looking for whatever is the power play.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those things where the popular kids in LA have had their run of it for so long, and they haven't, and they're megacorps, so they don't have to. There is such a separation between the marketing and like the actual funding of a movie and the market. I mean, like between the funding and the making of the movie and the marketing side of the movie, there's not really a marriage between those things. And these megacorps end up, even though I'm 100% pro corporation in terms of like the theory of it.
Sure.
These megacorps end up acting exactly like socialist states, right? Where as long as the company as a whole is making money, right? The money generating parts of the company cover for the losses of the loss making parts of the company. So it ends up being a situation where the company within itself creates a wealth redistribution center. And so you can lose money on a propaganda movie as long as you make money on a tentpole movie, and nobody cares whether that movie is telling the truth or not. They only care if it's forwarding a narrative.
Yeah, and now the medium of comics are the propaganda wing for the
and the comics have all become part of it. So Marvel can
as
lose
an industry
money for DC, and they actually want them to lose money because they're a loss leader and they can claim the loss on their taxes. So Disney has no desire or no motive for Marvel to make money, because if they start making money, they have to start paying it all in taxes, and that's an issue. So they're actually incentivized for letting Marvel fail and using Marvel properties to create movies for the mass populace that can prop up the propaganda movies that don't make any money. And that's part. And Warner Brothers is the same way. And AT&T has been turning the screws because they don't like that idea. They want to make money because they're losing, because they've got to pay taxes anyway because they make enough money. So it's not the same game for them, I don't think. But that's one of the situations that you really have with comics, is because they've been absorbed into these corporations that function like autonomous socialist systems. In terms of like their economics, they're like basically nations to themselves. And so because they've become part of these autonomous socialist systems, the market forces don't apply to the individual branches of these megacorps. And that's a problem, I think. But that's deep in the weeds economic theory with a little bit of conspiracy in there.
Yeah. So in a way, like
interdimensional psychic vampires.
I think we're all finding ways of saying that there is a method to what looks like madness to us. There's a lot of violence happening to our favorite stories and IPs, but there's a reason. And there is a profitable reason if the profits are, if you're just thinking about the parent corporation who's using, Marvel and DC. Right. There is like a financial reason for doing these sort of things.
Perch and I were onto this a couple weeks ago because we were both basically saying that Marvel makes more money off of Spider-Man Band-Aids than they make off of any of the Spider-Man comics. And that's just a fact. And like when that reality really sinks in, you can see where the priorities are. And it's like there's no vested interest in making the best quality book, or else it gets canceled, because that's not the calculus.
The importance is the trademark, not the copyright on any story. The importance is the trademark and perpetuating a trademark and keeping whatever you currently have trademarked or copywritten in the cultural zeitgeist. So why do you redesign Superman's iconic costume? Because you want your visual trademark. You don't want that so anything that could be construed to look like your trademark to enter into the public domain, because then people can start to use that stuff. And so it's really only about, in my opinion, the only reason that any of these companies would keep these properties alive and keep making stuff is to perpetuate those trademarks.
And what a really interesting example that I've brought up before and I'll bring up again. DC, AT&T, Time Warner are in an interesting spot too, because like there are certain there's one particular property of theirs they have to make comics of every month or every publication cycle, and that's Wonder Woman. And if they stop making Wonder Woman for one publication cycle, they lose rights to the character. And she'll enter in the public domain immediately, because their contract with Marsden and with his harem.
I was
just saying estate. His harem's dead. With his estate was that they would revert back to the estate, but it's been long enough since his death that it'll enter the public domain instantly if they stop making Wonder Woman comics. So it doesn't matter how good Wonder Woman comics are as long as they're being made. So there's actually an incentive to keep making Wonder Woman, and they'll never stop making Wonder Woman, or they'll instantly lose the trademark entirely.
And that's why they'll lose all the rights to Watchmen if it ever goes out of print. Like there's so many decisions that are made because of that. And like was it Young Justice was when it was first canceled, was merely canceled because they couldn't find a way to merchandise it. That was the only. It had nothing to do with the fact that the show itself was profitable or not profitable, or rated well or not rated well. They literally were like, we can't find a way to sell toys off this.
Right.
Like, that was the driving force.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and
it'll be
even that was just strip mining a better property. But that's okay.
It'll be interesting to see what happens in another 2-3 decades when the most iconic characters start to enter into those stories. They start to enter into the public domain, because basically you're going to get the Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated travesty that they hold the trademarks to the names Tarzan and John Carter and things like this, and then they sue the crap out of anybody that tries to make anything. But you're going to have it on a massive scale because, I mean, it's Superman.
I think we're going to have some. I did some reading, and there was the article I read said that we're about to head into some precedent-setting waters, because there's some court cases that are going to be very important, because and people are, especially because of the digital revolution, the Overton window has moved a lot further towards people wanting to use the content, whereas beforehand Disney was really because was it the Sonny Bono copyright extension? They slipped that through. I don't think that would slip through again. There's way too many people who have a vested interest in using the content afterwards. So I'm very interested to see like how those court cases boil down.
And here's part of my take on that too. Like I'm 100% like property rights, but like, Walt Disney's been dead since the 70s. So let's be real about this. But beyond that, one of the things that it comes to is that like DC, Marvel, Disney, they're not using the material that was produced, that classic material that was produced back in the day. If you could get out there and if they were reprinting, or if they were allowing us access to the archives, that would be a different story. But you've got amazing animation, amazing comics that are just sitting, and some not amazing ones too, but some amazing comics that are just sitting there that nobody can touch. And that's a problem, right? And somebody, and it's just like the Max Fleischer cartoon, Superman cartoon, nobody was doing anything with that until it went public domain. And then the people can see it, and they can see that it's good, and they can appreciate it. But that was the thing that the art was being stifled because nobody could make money off of it. And then once somebody can make money off of it, suddenly we can appreciate that again, and we can see what they did and how, like, so much of the late 90s cartoon renaissance had to do with inspiration from the Fleischer brothers. And that's something that I think that we, and I grew up watching like reruns of like Gulliver's Travels on TV and stuff like that was still out there. But Superman was something that nobody could touch until we could, and then we can see it and we can appreciate it and we can really get to see the remarkable artistry that went into that. So,
I'm a huge proponent of public domain especially after like almost a century. I'm like everyone who really, my kids and grandkids got all the money they need from that. I don't think, because what ends up happening inevitably is that it doesn't go to families. It goes to those giant socialistic nationwide international megacorps. And then here's the thing, a corporation never dies. A person can die and transfer property, and the property can kind of eventually trickle down to wherever and kind of, get back into the ecosystem. Once it's owned by a corporation, it's game over. Like
one of the things I think really comes to too is that, like, look at like the Shadow, right?
Yeah.
The Shadow hasn't been treated well as a property being held onto. Like the people that are going to show the Shadow love are the people that are the fans that are going to resurrect it. The same way the Black Bat wasn't treated well before he entered the public domain.
Go ahead, Five Fox.
Well, the problem is, like, I think the Edgar Rice, like I said earlier, the Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated, that company is the best example of it. They don't produce anything. They're nothing but a licensing house. They hold these characters' names in a legal, slavery, basically, and you assert your rights as taking part of your culture that has entered in the public domain, something that has been the history of the world is reinterpretation of characters and using myths and building upon things to make things better and new. And like you have these, basically all of these companies have become licensing companies. Like things like Disney and Warner Bros. Yeah, they make stuff, but essentially it's like we're talking about, they become a licensing house. And as these things enter into the public domain, they want to establish those trademarks and they want to become licensing. So then anybody that wants to make a Superman comic, well, you got to license it, or they can just control it and make it all themselves.
The thing, I don't know enough about trademark, but you're not supposed to. Again, that's where I think we're going to hit some interesting court cases, because you're not allowed to use trademark to basically do the exact same thing a copyright would do. You're not allowed to end run copyright expiration through trademark. Like that's deliberately supposed to be like in there. So I think there have been some weird kind of like fringe cases, but like I think it's going to take something as popular as Superman for them to have that landmark decision.
Because once Superman enters into the public domain, like if I have enough money to make a Superman movie, well, and I think it's going to make money and I can do it right and I can make something people will like, well then yeah, that's worth it to me to fight it.
Yeah,
but right now, is Tarzan like as culturally relevant as Tarzan is today, where people know his name? Is he worth fighting a company that will sue you over not licensing him from them?
Right.
Yeah. Well, and that's like I'll be completely honest. Like I am anxiously awaiting the stars to align and Popeye to enter the public domain, because frankly, Popeye belongs in the Ideal Comics universe, people. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but there's a Popeye-shaped hole in our universe. And I even have an artist who will do the art that'll be perfect for that project if I can give him the money. So
I think he has the same first name as us.
My test case for public domain has always been characters like Sherlock Holmes and Robin Hood and King Arthur, because the culture. Because I think it was Razor Fist, who I usually like his videos, but he really came out swinging strongly against public domain. And I was like, dude. And he was like, there's no quality control. There's so many crappy movies. And I was like, people have made some good Sherlock Holmes content and they've made some bad Sherlock Holmes content. But the fact that it's in public domain means anyone can make a thing. And then the market can decide which one is good or not. Same thing with
important in principle.
And that actually comes back, full circle to our discussion from earlier, right? The problem with the Hugos and the problem with our society is we've lost the ability to really have discussions about quality because we don't have that vocabulary anymore.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the things that we can really do, because like here's a great example, right? What's his name? Guy who played Tony Stark. Damn it,
Robert Downey Jr.
Thank you, Robert Downey Jr.'s the Sherlock Holmes biology.
Completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
Richie, who did
Those
that one?
were terrible Sherlock Holmes stories, but they were really fun movies, right? Like
Yeah.
his portrayal of Sherlock Holmes had nothing to do with Sherlock Holmes for the novels, right? But they were still fun, and it was still it was a creative use. And it was very much if Arthur Conan Doyle was writing a Robert Downey Jr. movie, it might look like this. Not a Sherlock Holmes movie, but a Robert Downey Jr. movie. And they were both really intriguing and fun action movies. They weren't like super deep, complex storyline. The twists were a little obvious, but it was a really fun Robert Downey Jr. movie.
I think the first one was better than the second one. I think.
Yes, the first one was definitely better than the second one. No argument from me on that one. But it was still a situation where, like, I wouldn't, even though like there is zero canonicity to those movies, like I'm still super glad they got made. I bought both of them for $5 at Walmart on Black Friday. Totally worth the $10 I spent on it.
Right, and there's been plenty of like good and bad Robin Hood and King Arthur content, and so the fact that anyone can use it has actually helped it.
Yeah. And I think with a lot of those things that have a single creator, like The Shadow, Walter Gibson, right? There is, in my mind, there is no canon outside of Walter Gibson's Shadow stories. Even the radio shows don't really match up to the quality of the novels, right? And I haven't read all of them, but I mean, just really, it's just they're fun, and I like a bunch of Shadow comics, but it's just like they're not going to be the same. There's its own interpretation of it, and that's just fine. And when those should be in the public domain, so people that are writers who are working on learning how to build universes and are looking at how to do that have access to those stories, because they're not reprinting them like they ought to be. They're not getting them in people's hands like they ought to be, and because they're being held up in a lot of times by contract. I mean, by these ancient stories being held up by licensors, right?
And you guys are just advocating now for endless remakes and reboots now.
I'm fine with I'm totally
okay.
Because
and that's part of the thing. Like we're looking at that is I'm looking at it from a long distance perspective. Because I mean, like, first of all, like I got my start really honed my craft as a writer. I mean, it's something you never stop doing. But like, I really feel I took the jump between a high schooler who used to pencil stories and impress his younger siblings to somebody who I was ready to show my writing to the public, doing fan fiction, right? And doing articles at Fanzine.
Fair, yeah.
And that's fair use stuff, and that's allowable. But like, you don't really. I think that developing characters and universe rules are something that are difficult enough that can't be your first venture out. You know what I'm saying? And fan fiction is a really good place to start working that kind of stuff out.
Which you can do now. You just can't make money off of it.
You can't make any money at it. But sometimes it's worth trying, right?
Yeah.
And I mean,
sure.
Not to put too fine a point on it, but sometimes fan fiction ends up being decent,
because that would just be my only kind of reservation, just thinking aloud, is that people are kind of aware that there's not a lot of new content being made in the last 10 or 15 years that isn't just kind of reviving things from the 80s and older. So there's already kind of a scare that.
Well, once again, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that that's where the moneymaker is, right? I'm talking about an end run by using known properties that are past their expiration date, right? And this is specifically like that.
That's fair.
are situations where we're actually looking at end running around the industry as it is. And that's really what Walt Disney did. Right? Like that was the Disney model, was using these fairy tales, these well-known characters, and reinterpreting them to create an
public
American
domain
mythology,
stuff, basically. Yeah,
right. To create American mythology using the fairy tales of Europe that people already knew the stories or knew parts of the stories, and that's how we got Dumbo. Was because he already had made Snow White, because he'd already made Popeye, because of these other things, and he was able to do that by creating something new out of something old.
And when things fall into the public domain, it protects lesser known properties. If a corporation owned Pride and Prejudice or Sense and Sensibility, or even something more not as popular like Tom Jones or something, if they owned these things and they were controlled by them in the sense of like they are now, you wouldn't get them made. They because they don't make enough money, they're not worth it. And so basically it's a company perpetuating a copyright or perpetuating a trademark in order to prevent anybody else from doing it. And so when those things start to fall into the public domain, because anybody can do it, it starts to keep those things alive and keep them, the good things, around. And I agree with Matt. I'm a fan of original content, but I think about our friend Eric Hawkins' book, The Zombiful World of Oz. And the Oz books are pretty much, I think, all of the ones written by Baum are in the public domain. And anybody can make a good story in it, but how many good stories do you see with the Wizard of Oz characters? Not many, because it's a tough nut to crack. And so you need somebody that has a passion for it and knows the stories and read them and really has a love for them, like Eric, who really wants to tell a story in that world. And so you do get those passion projects where someone is doing something transformative, and that's what's really cool to see, is when somebody takes something and really wants to work in it because they love it, not because they want to make a dollar. I think about what T.H. White once in Future King, right? Here's a guy, a scholar of Arthurian myth and legend. He takes it and codifies it and collates it and makes everything into his narrative, his version of it. And
I could not get into that book. I tried.
Yeah, that's on my shelf yet. I haven't done it, but I do know that Stephen Lawhead did the same thing with his Arthur cycle.
Right. Yes, he did.
It's phenomenal.
Taliesin and things, yeah. Well, but the way that we think of King Arthur is so much influenced by his work, and he really distills the essence of it. And that's the cool thing about things entering into the public domain. Like, why is nobody really writes stories using Robinson Crusoe, but it's still being published, and I think as we sort of maybe transition back to the Hugos, by placing emphasis on woke politics or having the right kind of a diverse cast in your book, or really representing some sort of politics that someone wants you to represent, you're not really celebrating the good things. And so when culture looks back and says, oh, what was celebrated that year, and they see these things and they look them up, and maybe they aren't good, maybe they aren't being celebrated because they're good, and they start saying, really, is this what they really liked? Like, are those the things that are going to stand the test of time? Cancel J.K. Rowling, but Harry Potter is going to last, and the Poppy War probably not. No offense to the writer.
Aw. Well, I wanted to add, because I think if I see Matt's point about like a flood of imitation content, which that the public domain, especially applied to popular pop culture phenomenons, could produce. That being said, I think that over time the market would self-correct that. And would allow for originality to reemerge. So like if we do a test scenario with Superman, let's say Superman is fair game for everyone. So yeah, tomorrow everyone would make a Superman piece of content. Like it would just flood everywhere. What?
Yeah.
Oh, you would. Okay. But here's the thing, because it would flood everywhere, Superman, it would actually it would be a self-limiting factor, because eventually people would go, I'm sick of this, and then originality would slowly come back. So like I think the marketplace would self-correct. So we'd probably have to live through a couple of years of like, oh my gosh, this is the 5th Superman film, but then like they'd stop making money because people are just gonna get tired of it. And then only the good Superman films that are like top tier quality would get made, and then other stuff would need to basically fill the gap. So I think that the marketplace has a self-correcting factor that would address the originality question.
It'd be a net gain, probably.
Well, and I mean, a lot of that comes to is like people are going to need to figure out what their competitive market are, right? So like every time, for example, every time Disney does another fairy tale, right? There are some other companies that make a copycat product, right? Like, oh hey, we're doing our version of the Snow Queen. Woo! We're gonna make it look kind of like Frozen, and we're gonna sell it for $5. Woo! Okay, that's fine. But that's not a bunch of them, right? Everybody knows there's a limit to what they're going to be able to actually sell, and versus the cost and everything else. And people know it's not really Frozen. So they people will try to catch the hype of a certain kind of a thing, but there's still a limit to what the market will do on that kind of stuff. And those are public domain characters. So I think that you're going to have people that there'll be some of that, but I don't think people, if suddenly everybody can make a Superman story, I don't think everyone will race out because they know that the market won't support everybody's Superman story. So I think that there'll be a limit to what you get with all of that. And then people have got to, they're going to fight through the market to see what really maintains that quality on it. So. But,
yeah, good points.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's bring our writer Haggard into the public domain. Can we do that?
Right.
You guys don't know him, do you?
I don't
think so. No.
Like he's the guy. He's like the grandfather of the Conan author, basically.
Okay.
Oh, really? Oh, Howard, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if he's literally the grand. I mean, he's close.
Did you say Howard or Haggard?
Oh yeah, H. Rider Haggard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He basically inspired. He's like the 19th century.
Wait.
He probably already is.
Are you talking about the guy who did all those old like adventure books?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I read one of his about William the Bruce and William Wallace and Robert the Bruce. Sorry.
Oh, cool.
Like, yeah, that was a really good book. Yeah.
I mean, I'd just spend the rest of my life making those comics, but I'm pretty sure I'd get sued right now if I tried.
Aw.
Well, even though they're like 120 years old.
That's the real problem with the comic book industry. Lawyers. Is it? What's his name? Oh, you know who I'm thinking? I'm thinking of H.G. Henty. I think.
I don't know that name. What did he do? Okay, I guess he's more adventure stuff.
G.A. Henty. Sorry, not H.G. Henty. G.A. Henty is the one I'm thinking of. Sorry. So we're thinking of different people.
Yeah.
G.A. Henty did a whole bunch of like adventure stories for like boys and stuff about like famous. He did like historical fiction for boys about historical figures and stuff. So he did one called In Freedom's Cause that's about this young man who lives at the same time as William Wallace and Robert the Bruce. He gets involved in the whole Scottish fight of independence. It's a fantastic adventure story.
Oh, fun.
Haggard wrote King Solomon's Mines and all those books.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Those are 100% public domain, dude.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that's why.
Hot damn.
That's one of the.
I gotta get started on.
That's one of the reasons Quarterman was a character in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, because all of those are public domain characters.
Is that why? Oh,
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, everybody in League was a public domain. So Dracula had gotten an extension, and it expired in the late in the 90s.
Did you know his grandson? So it's like a grandson of Bram Stoker. He lives in the same state that I live in, and he wrote a sequel to Dracula.
I have it. I haven't read it yet, but I have it.
It is terrible.
I have heard.
Oh no!
He literally did the Last Jedi. He pulled a Rian Johnson on Dracula.
No,
it's everything.
Turned Dracula into a woman.
Do you care about?
Not Yeah, I don't spoil it. I'll read it eventually.
I think we've had this conversation before.
Yeah,
but
I told you not. I told you to keep your yap shut.
I still haven't spoiled it except for the fact that he pulled a Ryan Johnson.
Yeah, that's fine.
Dracula got cucked.
Yeah.
You do need to read it at some point so I can finally like spoil it for your audience. So I feel like I keep on.
There you go. That sounds like it's like something we got to do in 2021. Or before then or something. I don't know. Anyway, okay. So we're after 2 hours actually. So this has been really fun, guys. Thanks for coming on and talking about the inevitable consequence of hubris and assigning people their value by their race. Don't do that, folks out there in the world. Don't do that. We're humans first. Culture's malleable, for crying out loud.
Be mean to them for the right reason.
Be mean to them for the right reasons, because we all suck. And that's my little fatalistic nod. So, Matt, you are getting your books are at the printer, right? For Kyrie 2?
They're actually on a container ship called the Hyundai Sonata or something. I'm not even kidding. It's not a racist joke. Coming from Korea. On their way here, so
it's called the Sonata.
Yeah, it's called like the Hyundai Saturn or Hyundai. Like I'm not even. I wouldn't do that.
It's named after an import car. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So now I just doxed my container vessel, but yeah. So they're on their way, and I'll be fulfilling in end of September is what it's looking like. And I got everything ready except I got original art going out to international postage as a thank you for just spending more on, believing in the book enough to spend more on postage and drawing everyone art. So I have to do that between now and then. And
but did you bag and board it?
Actually, I'm flex sealing it.
Okay.
This is my.
I used to be using flex tape.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, basically, yeah.
It's called flex and seal. It's not flex seal.
Yeah.
That's a lot of damage.
Speaking of copyright, yeah, close enough to the copyright. Ooh, what's this? Is this art for an upcoming comic of yours, Reese?
No, this is Twitless's. I'm sharing it.
Oh, wow.
This is the Adventures of Omega Girl, classic superhero storytelling, and this is a giant robot, which I know everyone loves. There's the superhero
getting in the game. Oh,
yep.
That's nice art.
Yeah. This is a self-funded project because I'm insane.
So, and this is, of course, it's a little different than your normal fare that you have on the web right there. It's not silly per se, correct?
This is like I'm going to do print on demand. This will be an actual 24-page comic book, and it is not my usual comedy fare. This is classic adventure superhero stories that I love. I love reading them. I love telling them, and so
now now not to compare, but
sure.
There was somebody had a specific tagline earlier. We're talking about Punchline by Bill Williams and Matt Weldon,
and
somebody said Silver Age comics for the modern age.
Oh,
and I
that's
thought,
good.
That's beautiful because that's what I aspire to pull something off like that at some point. But from what you've talked about, that kind of has a similar feel to what you're shooting for too. Is that
a little bit? I don't want to just stay in Silver Age because I want to be able to I don't want to just pigeonhole myself because there are some stories I want to tell that have some modern overlap. I have some manga influences because I read a crap load of manga like a nerd. So it's kind of a mix of things, but. If you like the old Justice League cartoon with by Dwayne McDuffie, I love that kind of that type straddling that sort of serious, but also some not super mega dark and when I am dark, it's for a storytelling reason and it's not just to rub your face in nihilism. So it's like I said, I still feel tied to some classic storytelling modes. Also, Carl Toons has joined us in the chat, and he said, "Did someone say giant robot?" I did. We have one on page here. It's cool. Giant robots are great. Yeah, and Carl Toons is Carl's Amateur Hour on Twitter. He is if you're not following him, you should be.
Yeah, highly recommend.
Yeah, highly recommend. His art feed is well worth it.
Alrighty, I'll check that out.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. When can we expect this to be crowdfunded? Or you said you're self-funding.
I'm
it, so-
self-funding. Yeah. So I'm hoping
Ooh.
to have the first issue, 24 pages, done this probably at the end of the summer, beginning of the fall. I'm going to do, I think, a print on demand, and I'm going to run some promotions on some streams where I sign some books live and then try to, live stream me putting them in the mail.
Are you planning on having a digital offering as well?
Yes, there will be a digital offering. Yeah.
Cool. Very cool.
Yep.
Exciting.
Flyfox Pro, you
Yes.
are still up in the webcomic game, yeah?
Yeah. I have a webcomic called Peter the Problematic Person. It's on Webtoon. I haven't had one in like a month that I put up, but I actually have one that's nearly finished, an entry. It's going to be a longer one, and depending on how far I get in it, it might actually wrap up the first little. It's mostly a gag comic, but it has a little story going on, and it might wrap it up. So that'll be soon. And then I was hoping to finish it this week, but I have a comic called The Adventures of Stephen Starlight, and it's a sort of a throwback to Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers type of a pulp science fiction hero, and that should be inked and fully inked by next week. And then I hope to couple that together with a backup story called The Mighty Orc, and have that book, like Twitless here, out by the end of the summer. So those will be fun, and hopefully people will look forward to those. But I also had a question for you. Who's Victor?
Oh, yes.
Victor Hugo? What does he have to do with this conversation? Hugo's
Victor
named after Hugo Gernsback, so I don't know. I didn't get was it a joke?
Are they not? Oh.
They're named after Hugo Gernsback. So
Okay. Well, then I should change the name of this. I always thought it was named after Victor Hugo, who was the one of the first science fiction writers. So
no, Hugo Gernsback.
Is he science fiction?
Well, horror, I guess, more than that.
Yeah.
Gothic stuff.
Are we thinking of The Hunchback as science fiction? I guess.
well,
I don't know.
Yeah, there's this crossover. I could be wrong.
Interesting.
That's
That's kind of
change the name of the
I
stream.
just wanted to Reese
French
Reese,
Frankenstein,
well,
I guess.
actually,
There you go.
I just wanted to actually Reese. So
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't mind.
I have
it's
to say,
fair.
like this is why these sort of streams are so fascinating, and I love YouTube, because it's not just people like yapping. We're also like creating, and we're throwing ideas to paper and creating product, and then tossing it to the open market and seeing what happens. Like, it's so exciting. I love that everyone here is making
stream
stuff.
because I like to gather people on that can make me look like a buffoon. So I think it's
I
humbling.
don't think that's happening.
I was gonna say, you just got us on here so you could tell us how we're all wrong about Civil War.
Okay. Yeah, but I have the wrong Hugo, so that's okay.
I would have made the same assumption, by the way. That's
Yeah, well, I mean, okay. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm wrong. So, I, of course, over at Ideal Comics, we do web and print comics. We are working behind the scenes on Sola Voce, an expositioner story. It's a crime superhero story involving monsters and murder and destruction. And we are working on that. We're very excited for it. And so we're we had a bunch of production problems with that, but we are back on, and we'll be updating folks about that as we go.
Nice.
Forces of Good and Evil is our comedy action webcomic featuring high schoolers with superpowers, heroes and villains, and that is publishing twice a week at forcesofgoodandevil.net. Check it out. Once we finish the current story, we are going to be going on hiatus for a little while we work on some other projects behind the scenes. So if you want to know what those things are and watch them in progress, check out our Patreon. And that's how that stuff goes.
until Patreon goes out of business.
Until they go out of business, and then they'll have to rebuild the site entirely and hopefully get the last bit of the money. So that's where we're at with that, because we do have a few patrons, and thank you I don't know if any of them watch my show, but we really appreciate it over at the Ideal Comics Patreon. So
awesome.
So yeah, that's the story. Next week We don't. I have got a couple of guests lined up. Doug Curtis from the Flying Ferret webcomic, and Neil, and I don't know Neil's last name, who has done Dyson, the webcomic Dyson, for probably 15, 17 years, something like that.
Whoa.
And we're going to get some other people on, maybe even Carl, if he wants to, if he's in the chat still. We're going to be doing why I'm still doing webcomics, and that's going to be our theme for next week. And hopefully I can talk Matt Johnson to come on again. And that's what we're going to be talking about is just why we're doing it, what we're doing it, why we think webcomics matter. So,
Cool.
Because I've been at it for a long time, so I thought that would be something fun to talk about. So
Cool. Yep.
That's next week's show. And until then, keep out there reading comics and support the people that you think are worth the time. So, and hopefully we're one of them. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And we'll see you out there on the internets.
Yep.